Today we also have a lot of single questions, but they are of a very different type. And this is a bit strange for a judgment and decision-making course, but I feel like this is an important session. I have to say that for me personally, when I was a student, this was a very frustrating session because I'm not very good with riddles. So we're going to have a lot of riddles today. The riddles that are trying to tap into some aspect of your cognition. So within the big umbrella of judgment and decision making, we have something called the social cognition. So the way that our cognitive minds, our cognition works in a social context. So we are going to talk about things like blind spots and how our cognition is affected by social norms. So in order to try and tap that, I think it's important that we try and tackle some riddles together. Just out of curiosity, before I begin with this, how many of you really like riddles, are very good with riddles? Raise your hand. Nobody? How many of you, like me previously, hate riddles with passion? Raise your hand. One or two. Okay, that's good. Some of you, I guess, are in the middle or just in listening mode, which is completely okay. So maybe just to get you started with this, I'll just give you an example of what a riddle is for you to try and think about this. So typically I would ask you to do this in a Mentimeter, but the Mentimeter doesn't want to cooperate today. In general, this whole computer thing is not working with me. I take a lot of things from Twitter, now called X, and this is a big meme. Perhaps you've seen this meme. So the way that I usually do this on the Mentimeter and the way that I use this experimentally is I try to tell people, imagine that your mother writes to you the following message. Solve carefully, 230 minus 220 times half equals, you probably wouldn't believe it, but the answer is, so let's say that your mom sends this to you. What would your reply be? So this blew up on the internet, and you cannot imagine just how many people are arguing. So I just took this after a day that this was up. Just look at the number of retweets and the number of likes. If you'll visit today, I think it's just like by the hundreds of thousands. So why would a simple question like this elicit so many reactions and emotions? So have a look at this and try to solve this. And then look at the answer and tell me if the answer is correct or not correct, okay? So I'm gonna ask you, is the answer correct? If you believe that this is correct, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, okay, good. How many of you feel that this is not a correct answer? Raise your hand. Most of you, right? So let's say that your mom sends this to you. And I don't know how your mom is with math. My mom is not very good with math. She sends this to you and she asks for your reply. Let's assume that you don't agree with this. What would you do? Send back a reply and say, Mom, this is not the right answer. What is the right answer for this? All the people who raised their hands and said no, what is the right answer? 120. How to solve this? Why is it 120 and not this answer? Right. So it seems to us, the way that we interpret this, if I understand it correctly, that it could be that some people interpret this as, let's do the left part first and then do the right part. But you're saying, because we multiply, we're doing the right part first, and then we subtract this from the left part, right? Something like this. So imagine for a second that it's not your mom that's sending this to you, but your math professor is sending this to you and asking you to verify this. How would you reply if this is your math professor? Well, let's say me, I send you this kind of thing and I'm telling you, how would you react? What would you say? Would you correct the professor? Would you assume that this is wrong? How would you do this? Now, the reason why I'm showing this to you is because there's obviously a blind spot, right? Or something that we're not noticing. Otherwise, this would be very boring. It seems like this is more than just about the order of the math, right? Something else in there. It seems like you know what the thing is. Do you want to share with everybody? What is this about? Yeah, exclamation mark is factorial. What is factorial? Right, so factorial is 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, which is how much? 120, which is the right answer. So actually 5 exclamation mark is the right answer, right? And this really blows up because what the hell is happening? It's just an exclamation mark. We didn't even think about this as a math, but finally somebody post this, and you were very right about the way that you were doing this kind of math, but 120 does equal 5 exclamation mark. So why is this important for us? Because exclamation mark has a few uses, right? It could be used to say, hey, look at this is important. Could also be something about math, right? So already we can understand that we can play with this double meaning. So for example, just by sending you a message, either by your mom, who maybe doesn't know math very well, or a professor of math that knows math very well, it gives you more pause to say, wait, a professor of math will probably get this right. It cannot be that he's not seeing something this obvious, right? So we were talking about system 1 and system 2, very badly named, the fast system and the slow system. So if it comes from Twitter, of course, we want to correct that person on the internet that is wrong. We'll spend a lot of time arguing, 100,000 people just arguing, retweeting, yes, no, you're right, you're wrong. But perhaps if this comes from a place of authority, from a professor of math, then we think, oh, wait, now we need to switch to the slow system. Let's deliberate this. Maybe there's a catch here. Maybe there's something that we don't see. So at the beginning, we just have an immediate gut intuition about how to interpret exclamation mark. If we know this and we've seen this before, perhaps we have a bit more of experience with this, then okay, so maybe there's something else here. But there's a lot that we don't see. So today, we're going to have a lot of these blind spots. So I'm going to try and get you to train your mind to look beyond the obvious, your gut reaction, to understand social cognition and how this is affected, and how we play with these kinds of biases. So this is how I usually manipulate this. We can do research on this. You can publish articles on this kind of thing. Version A with your mom and version B with a distinguished math professor. How long would it take you to respond to this message and whether you would correct the person or whether you would think, wait, maybe there's something about me that is wrong. Okay? So this is already an interesting demonstration of this. Now, you've probably seen this before, but this is a very interesting kind of riddle, you can call this. I play this with my nieces and nephews in my native language. So the main question is, what is the name of the fifth kid, right? So the scenario is, Cindy has 5 kids. First kid's name is January, second kid's name is February, third kid's March, and fourth kid is April. What is the name of the fifth kid, right? So if we want to answer that question, what is the answer to that question? What is the name of the fifth kid? Yeah. So let's see a very interesting TikTok YouTube couple where the boyfriend is really trying to harass his girlfriend. So there's a lot of these YouTube videos about them arguing about these kinds of riddles. He really likes to put this to her. I have to say, sometimes it feels like a little bit too much, but I feel like there's something interesting going on here in the way that she reacts to the frustration of not understanding what he wants from her. So let's see a little bit of that.
Cindy has 5 kids. The first kid's name is January, yeah?
Yes.
Second kid is February. Third kid is March. Fourth kid is April. What is the name of the fifth kid?
May.
No.
Why not?
Because it's not. What do you think it's May for?
January, February, March, April, May.
It's not May, Jen. You're not listening to what I'm saying, are you?
I am!
You're not.
Do you know any other days of the month, Brad? Months of the days, whatever you want to call them. Names?
Names of the month.
Yeah, that.
Yeah?
Because I don't. April,
Yeah?
yeah, is the last name of the kid.
Yeah.
Fourth kid.
Yeah.
So what is the name of the fifth kid? It's going to be called May, isn't it? She ain't going to call anything else. She ain't going to skip May and go, oh, we'll call.
So it goes on like this for 3 minutes where she doesn't understand what he wants from her. What does he want from her? So what is the name of the fifth kid? Any answers? What? Why is that the name? Because it says what is the name of the fifth kid. So the fifth kid is named what, right? Many movies and many skits in comedy have been based on this. So perhaps you know of some of these, but I just collected a bunch of YouTubers. I'll just show you the very classic one from a famous TV show.
What is your name?
Oh no, what is not my name?
What is your name?
And I'm telling you it is not.
What is his name?
9.
Aha! Mr. 9.
That is not his name.
You just said it was.
You ask me if his name is what, and I tell you 9. What is not his name, but also not 9.
What is his name?
Absolutely not.
Not what?
That is correct.
What is your name?
Wrong again. He's not here.
Who's not here?
What? Now, who is not here and what is not here neither?
Yeah. So it gets very frustrating, of course, to the people who need to deal with this kind of stuff. Also, if you like dad jokes, so this is an interesting example of that.
What has 4 letters, sometimes has 9, and never has 5?
I don't know what.
Yeah, so she perceives this to be a question, but he's just saying how many letters there are in the word what. So what has 4 letters and so forth. But she gets very frustrated with this and it keeps on going like that. So things have double meaning.
Has 4 letters.
It's like exclamation mark.
Sometimes has
right?
9. And never has 5.
I don't know. Dad, what is it?
Exactly.
Yeah. And when it comes to, you can take this into many different directions. So we've got the famous interesting couple here where he is driving her crazy with all kinds of things. So for example, you can already guess the answer for this. So what do you call a bear without an ear? A B. You take out the ear in the bear and it just becomes the letter B because you took all the letters. Drives her crazy with this. The 15 monkeys, not going to go in there. When is your birthday if something? So for example, this one. How many legs do you have if? So basically people misunderstand these kinds of questions. Keeps on going.
Can you just do this?
No.
Well, I know you want to go out, yeah, but I ain't done one of these questions in ages. Just give me literally 2 minutes of your time and answer one of these questions. Because everyone's been sending it to me and saying, get Jen to do this.
Well, hurry up then.
So can you just do it, yeah?
Hurry up then.
Right, question is, you have 5 cows,
Yeah.
2 dogs,
Yeah.
and 1 cat.
Yeah.
How many legs do you have?
How many legs do I have?
So how is she understanding the question? I need to think, how many legs do these animals have? But what is he asking her? How many legs do you have, right? And she doesn't get it. It just keeps on going like this for a very, very long time, over 4 minutes for her to figure this out.
5, 10, 15.
Counting. Anyway, it's a very interesting couple. And even more interesting is going to the comment section and seeing how people react to this couple doing this kind of thing. At the beginning, I thought this is a disaster of a relationship, that they're never going to last, but they got married and now they're happily ever after. So sometimes even when you tease one another, there is hope for love after all. You perhaps know some of these scenes. So this is a very famous scene. Do you know that one? Yeah, you've seen it many times. Has a little bit to do with Chinese, Mandarin, Cantonese names.
Who are you?
You.
No, not me, you.
Yes, I am you.
Just answer the damn questions. Who are you?
I have told you.
Are you deaf?
No, you is blind.
I'm not blind, you blind.
That is what I just said.
You just said what?
I did not say what. I said you.
That's what I'm asking you.
And you is answering.
Shut up. You.
Yes?
Not you, him. What's your name?
Me.
Yes, you.
I am me. He's me. And I'm you.
And I'm about to whoop your old ass, man.
The question is, why is this happening to us? And why all these misunderstandings? And why these stumpers? And why do we have such a frustration over this? And why did this blow up on YouTube and TikTok and all of this? It's because we have a lot of assumptions and we have a lot of heuristics and biases. We make a lot of cognitive shortcuts. So one of the brilliant things about Kahneman and Tversky is that they were able to demonstrate this very effectively with very simple experiments. Just showing people a single question can already show them something about our psychology, about cognition, about the way that we think about the world. So I'm going to show you another classic. Perhaps you've seen this already. Distractions and blind spots in the first session or two when we went over some classic JDM findings and illusions and all that. We talked a little bit about change blindness. So this is an example, a very famous cartoon, also blew up. I wish I didn't exist, a little bit dark. And the genie says, okay, granted. And he says, nothing changed. And he says, look again. If you take a moment to look a little bit deeper, then you understand what happened. Do you see it? It takes a moment. So when he said I, he meant himself. He wants to disappear. But what the genie did is just take away the letter I. So then when you look carefully, it's like, oh, nothing changed. There's no I. Look again. There's no I, right? So very interesting because we don't see this at the beginning. Sometimes it takes looking at this again and again in order to figure out what is he talking about. There's a lot of TikTokers, but this one especially tries to pay people money in order to show them that they actually can't get things right. So this is another example.
$20. Read this sentence.
So read this sentence. It's a little bit small, but you can take a look and try and see if you can see this well. And then immediately people say, okay, $20, I can do this. So let's do this.
What if I told you you read the first line wrong? No, it's what if I told you you read the first line wrong, because I read it like that the whole time, bro.
Well, it says, what I if told you. $20.
So a lot of frustrations over there. So it just seems like we automatically get into this mode where we see something, our mind takes these shortcuts. But when we move into the more deliberative system and we take a little bit longer, then we're able to see the thing that we got wrong. So probably you're familiar already with the invisible gorilla, right? So you've seen this many, many times. You need to count, you focus on one thing, but then you don't see the real thing that's happening, which is a gorilla just comes in and does this kind of thing. And then afterwards, people are very surprised to see that there was actually a real gorilla in the video when they look at this again. So when we focus on one thing, we lose count of something else. So instead of the invisible gorilla, now that you understand that there's an invisible gorilla, I'm going to show you something that's a little bit different by the same person, Daniel Simmons, who is a big person in our in social cognition. and has done many good things for the field and also an open science guy. And if you remember, in the first task that you had, one of the books that was assigned to you was by him.
Ever watched a movie or TV show and noticed how sometimes an actor's beer mug will go from full to empty to full again? Or an actress's hairstyle will change slightly in the same scene? Well, those are called continuity errors, and they result from cutting together many takes to create one continuous scene. And one of the most common continuity errors involves food. Because the actors are actually eating, it can be nearly impossible to match what's on their plates from take to take. It's time for another test of your focus. We've set up a scene with our actors having dinner at a restaurant. All you have to do is track how many times their meals change. Remember, stay focused on their plates.
Cafe changes, take 2.
Are you ready to play? Let's begin.
It's been a really long time.
You still look the same.
I do.
You're even more beautiful.
I see you're still the same old charmer.
I feel like nothing's changed.
I got divorced.
Sometimes the thing you're looking for is right in front of your face, and you just can't see it. Kiss me, baby.
So
this hid a little bit, the subtitles, but I'll play this so you can see all the changes.
How many changes did you spot on their plates? Let's rewind and take another look. She begins with a salad, which becomes a massive lobster, and then magically some chocolate cake. His pork chop becomes chicken with vegetables. But suddenly, his plate is empty. Chances are you caught those changes, but did you happen to notice the 10 other things that changed right in front of your face? You may have caught a few, but we bet you missed a lot of them. While you were paying attention to their plates, deception specialist Apollo Robbins was changing the props in the actors' wardrobes. First, she got a flower, then a new hairstyle. She also lost her necklace and changed her shirt. He changed his glasses and tie, along with his sweater, and the flowers next to him got a serious trim. Oh, and did you notice he also grew hair?
Kiss me, baby.
So Invisible Gorilla, if you want to go revisit this, even if you know about the Invisible Gorilla, they did another version, the Advanced Invisible Gorilla, where people now pay attention to the gorilla. By paying attention to the gorilla, they're losing other things in the context. So every time people get smarter because they're more aware of these kinds of things, and Daniel Simmons comes up with something even bigger than this. But it goes very, very far. And sometimes we don't even realize how much of the details we're losing in the context. I think one of the most amazing demonstrations by Daniel Simmons is about this change blindness. So just in front of you, the person who you are talking to changes, and most people don't even notice that. So we'll see a little bit of that.
Play along with the participants in this one.
What's up, buddy?
Good, how are you?
All right, real good. I got a form. Let me just grab you a pen. All right, here we go. All right, now basically all this is a release form.
Okay, stop. Have you noticed anything weird so far? If you didn't, let's run through this one again for you.
I got a form. Let me just grab you a pen. All right, here we go.
If you caught this one, you may be surprised to find out you're in the minority. Now, let's run this one on a few more people to see just how many of them catch the switch.
Hey, what's up, buddy? How you doing? I just need you to fill out this release form, please. Let me grab you a pen. Okay, here we go. Go ahead and just sign and date it. So where are you from?
New Jersey.
How you doing today?
Great, how are you?
Real good, real good. I just need you to fill out this release form. Let me grab you a pen, okay? Okay, here we go. Let me just grab you a pen for this.
Okay. Making me sign a waiver for this, huh?
All right, here we go. Yeah, absolutely.
None of the next 3 people catch the switch.
Hello.
You may still be doubting that you would fall for this one if you were there in person.
What's your name?
Eva. EVA.
How could you possibly miss a person swapping out mid-conversation in plain view?
Can you describe the person who was here behind the counter?
He had dark hair. I think he had a black shirt on, but I'm not sure.
Can you stand up?
Oh my god, it was him!
And you don't recognize him, though?
No, I've never seen you before.
Okay, he was actually here behind the counter when you first came up to the counter. He's the one who said, I'm gonna duck down and get you a pen.
Oh my god, are you serious? Oh, that's totally embarrassing.
It turns out you don't notice changes like this because...
Yeah, so our cognition is very, very limited. Sometimes you don't realize how far this goes. You can run a lot of crazy, interesting experiments with this. It's really fun sometimes to be part of a lab like that. So they do a lot of cool stuff, and it has a lot of implications, including for mis- and disinformation. So the book that he wrote is actually based a lot on change blindness and about cognitive illusions and the way that we perceive different things. Here's another type of riddle for you. should be very easy, but obviously it's trying to show you a kind of bias. So you've got an orchestra of 120 players taking 40 minutes to play Beethoven Ninth Symphony. How long would it take for 60 players to play the symphony? So they're asking a kid to try and calculate this, right? So what is the obvious thing about this question? People assume. So if they don't know what it is to play music or what the purpose of playing classical music is, they just assume maybe we want to be efficient and we want to cut the time in half, or maybe if you have more people, then it takes shorter time in order to do this. But actually, it doesn't matter how many people. The symphony is the symphony, right? So it's not about that. It seems like some shortcuts are easier for some than for others. And here there's another twist. So there's another complication. And I want you to think very carefully, what could be the complication about this in our context, about the way that we do things compared to how these kids do these things? So you've got this question over here. And this is a school bus. I don't know if Hong Kong has school buses or something like this, but 80% of kids were able to answer this brain teaser. And the question is, which way is the bus driving? So just looking at this bus, can you figure out, or how would you figure out which way is it going? Is it going to the left or is it going to the right? So take a moment to think about this just by looking at the bus and figure out, is it going to the left or is it going to the right? Now, this was done in the US. Here we are in Hong Kong. There's a slight difference between Hong Kong and the US that is very important for this question, right? How many of you feel like you figured this out? Yeah, one of you, two, yeah. How many of you feel stumped by this? Like you don't get the point? How many of you feel like that? Few of you, yeah. So what is the point? How can we figure things out from this? Do you want to share with us? So I like this for many reasons. First of all, it's for us to figure out exactly what is going on. And then we figure out, okay, so we don't see the doors. So they're on the other side. And this is where people are alight. And then the second thing is that we need to take into consideration the direction of the traffic. So in the US, this would be opposite from what it is in Hong Kong. And then based on that, we need to understand, because the doors are up front, then there's a certain answer to this based on whether you're in Hong Kong or in the US. Sorry, yeah. We're talking about the door next to the driver because this is where people come up. Yeah. Oh, he needs to get off? Not in school buses. School buses are very unique. Do you have school buses in Hong Kong? Actually, like these, they look like that? No, it's like a mini bus, right? Kind of thing. Yeah, so it's maybe something a little bit unique about American culture. But the amazing thing about this is that adults first have a hard time understanding what the answer is, and then they have an even harder time, which is exactly what we went through, to explain this to others. But kids get this immediately because they need to board the bus, so they know exactly how to look at the bus. So this is what it looks like.
Monday, it's time for a brain game. Check out the bus on your screen. If the bus started moving forward, which direction would it move? Left or right? Stumped? Nearly 80% of children under 10 got it instantly.
Because we're smart? That way. Because the door is on the other side.
Monday, it's time for a brain game at 9.
Go back to the
your
diagram here. Good. So this is what would happen in the US, but of course in Hong Kong, because we drive on the other side, it will be to the opposite direction. So in the US, to the left, in Hong Kong, to the right. Is this what you meant? This is what you were trying to explain to me? Okay, good. So we have, so it takes us a while to figure this out as adults, especially if we don't know what the school is, or school bus is, and we don't know exactly what's happening with the door with the driver. But then again, we need to take a lot of things into consideration. So it's interesting that actually it is the kids that get this intuitively. And as we grow older, it takes us a little bit more time to compute. This is to show that experts develop an intuition that allows them to develop a shortcut that in many cases works. And sometimes losing that expertise, like growing up, creates confusion and an inability to communicate what it is that the solution might be. So I really like this because this is counterintuitive to some extent, because we perceive ourselves to be smarter than kids, but then some things kids get much better. But I also like this because it really depends on the context in Hong Kong and the US. So there's a lot of ways to investigate this, and we run studies on that. There's a reason why National Geographic decided to do all these videos on that. Now we get to the really frustrating stuff. So all this was trying to train you a little bit to think about things outside of the box and to realize that there are things that you maybe don't see. But now we get to the really the hardcore stuff, and we use these kind of things in our experiments. Yeah. So this is the hospital riddle. It came from this. So this is from a real article, from a real study. Perhaps you've seen this before. If you've seen this before, don't help others. So this is the riddle. A man and his son are driving along and get into a bad car accident. An ambulance shows up and takes them both to the hospital. The son is rushed into surgery. The doctor who will perform the surgery enters the operating room, but as soon as the doctor sees the patient, the kid, the doctor says, I cannot operate on this boy. He is my son. How can that be? Okay, so I'll give you a moment to think about this. If you think you know what the answer is, raise your hand. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, okay, good. Yeah, terrific. Good. So before we know what the answer is, I want to talk about the difficulty in this. Why is it difficult for some people to answer this? What is the stumper? What is causing people to get confused about this? Immediately when you saw the riddle, there was a little bit of being blocked. If you're not familiar with this, being blocked, like something doesn't make a lot of sense, and then you need to overcome yourself in order to figure out what is wrong, right? So what is the stumper? What's causing the confusion? Yeah, we already have one answer, which is really interesting, right? So there are many answers to this. But before you tell us what the answer is, tell us what the stumper is. So what is causing people the confusion? Yeah? Doctors being male. Okay, right. So in this case, immediately we have this gut reaction that the man, the doctor, has to be the man, and it's impossible because the man was just involved in the accident, right? How many of you had this kind of confusion at the beginning? Many of you? I had this at the beginning, right? Yeah. So what is wrong about this gut intuition? Why is this wrong, and how can we solve this? So what is your solution? What's the solution to a doctor can be female, so how is he the son? This is the mother or the wife, could be, right? Yeah, so first thing we assume gender, right? So this is already a very interesting answer. What else can we assume? Let's say that it's not gender, what is it? No, let's go, as ridiculous as you can, please share, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The doctor is the grandfather. I think it's similar to what you said, right? Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. So that's one solution to this. So talking about the definition of the son and the boy, so conflating these two. Terrific. What else can it be? Okay. Wow. A lot of creative things. I have not heard these two before. That's terrific. Yeah. Very good. Let's go with something a little bit more social because we're social cognition. So we're trying to solve this in a social. Yes, please. Two fathers. Ah, not easy to think about this, right? It's not the typical family that comes to mind, right? So at the beginning, we have gender stereotypes. And then we have family stereotypes about what a family looks like. And it's because we don't have a lot of experience with this. So perhaps if we live in a society that has a bit more of two fathers in a family, it'll be easier for us to think about this. But one of the reasons we get stumped is because we use these heuristics and biases. So it's very important. Sometimes I ask this again and again, even in cultures that have two fathers, and people don't come up with that answer. So it's a very good observation. So sometimes it could be wordplay. Sometimes you can use that as an experiment in order to study gender stereotypes or family stereotypes. So there's a lot of really cool things. So sometimes you can just take any riddle out there on the internet and think how you can use a single question in order to investigate something very fundamental about the way that people process stuff. So for example, for your third task, one of the things that you can do is go on some riddle website or go on Twitter and Google up some riddles and then think, what can I do with this in order to investigate something interesting about society? Gender stereotype, family stereotype, the direction of the bus, whether kids will get this or not get this. So the psychology of single questions actually has a lot of things to offer you. So you can come up with whatever innovation you want. It can even be based on some very classic riddle. Yeah, thank you for that. So yes, here we have two versions. So for example, in this experiment, what we would run is, we would run two versions, version A, version B, a woman and her son, a man and his son. And then we try to manipulate whether this is stereotype consistent or stereotype inconsistent. So let's say that this is my experimental design and I have these two conditions. How can I show the difference between them? How can I show the bias? How can I show the heuristic? One of the things that I can do is that I can measure, first of all, reaction times. How long does it take people to overcome this? So if I present this as a woman and her son, people are like, yeah, of course, obvious, it's his father, yeah? So people like immediately have a reaction. But if you show a man and his son, people are like, I need to think about something more creative. So sometimes something as simple as reaction time can give you some kind of an indication of something that's happening. So in our labs at the psychology department, we have a lot of researchers who study cognition and measure things with reaction times, right? Another thing that you can do is to measure how many people get these things correctly, or how creative they need to be, or how extreme they need to go in order to come up with a solution, right? So this is a good example for how to do an experimental design that goes beyond a single question. So you had one question that was a stumper. People are like, I don't know what's happening here. And then in order to demonstrate that this is a stumper, you would do a between subject design where you would have two different conditions, two different groups of people answering a different version of this, okay? So there's lots of really interesting TikTokers. I really like this doctor because she communicates about these kinds of things. So people call her Han Cutie, and she says, no, it's doctor. But she gets a lot of different responses, not necessarily just because people don't call her doctor, but it goes even further than this, with a little bit of sexual harassment sometimes.
What's that supposed to be about, baby? Girl, free up your eyes, stop acting crazy.
So commenting about whether she's married or not, that's a very common one. Just assuming that if she says she's a doctor, oh, you're training to be a doctor, or you aspire to be a doctor. No, I'm already a doctor. So that's already there. Then they comment, of course, on the way that she looks. So me and my colleagues, we like to compare your evaluations. So nobody really cares what I wear or how I look. Nobody ever commented about my appearance, but all my female colleagues, it's like, you know, the way that she wears her hair or her makeup or her suit, if this is appropriate or not. So she is affected. The evaluations are affected by whether the female professors come to class looking. I can come out with flip-flops and a Hawaii t-shirt and nobody will say anything. So that's another thing. Calling females by all kinds of nicknames. So nobody will come and call me, I don't know, boy, or call me by all sorts of nicknames that diminish me in some way. But a lot of female professors and my sister doctor get all sorts of things like baby girl, hun, and so forth. I'm acting shady. What's that supposed to be about, baby? And finally, the main video that I found, I wasn't able to import this.
Put your head on my...
So people assume that she is a nurse, a student, a drug rep, what people think she is. But she is a doctor, and she's very famous, and she does a lot of cool stuff on TikTok, so you're welcome to follow her. So these stereotypes are alive and well, even in a society nowadays where in some places we have more doctors. We definitely in the psychology department have a lot more female professors than we have. We are a minority. The males are a minority. And when it comes to enrollment, I think undergraduates, by far, we have a lot more females, not only in psychology, but also suddenly in engineering, computer science, medical students. Seems like males are disappearing and going to other places that are not academia. So all these stereotypes that we used to have are no longer valid, but they are very hard to get rid of. Okay, before we go to the next riddle, I'll give you some time to rest, to think about this. I have a lot more for you, but we'll take a 5-minute break, go refresh yourself, come back, and we'll do some more. Now that we understand how these riddles work, I hope that the next riddle is going to be a lot easier for you. So take your time in solving this. Here we have a barber riddle. So in Nevada, in the US, there's a town called One Horse that has one barber in the whole town. For some reason, one of the laws in the town is that every man in town must be clean shaven, all shaved. Furthermore, every man either must shave himself or be shaven by the barber. And the barber may only shave those who don't shave themselves. So the question is, who shaves the barber? So think carefully what the stumper is, what's causing you to pause, and how you overcame this. Okay? If you feel like you know the answer, raise your hand. You have some kind of answer. How many of you are stuck and not sure what to answer? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you have some answer? Raise your hand. Some answer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, some of you. Some of you are still figuring things out. That's okay, right? So of those who haven't figured this out, what is getting us stuck? What is the problem with this? What's causing the confusion? There's some contradiction here. There's something that seems impossible, right? And it seems like here, what's causing the bigger stumper compared to the previous question is that the way that the question is framed suggests one thing, right? So the question at the end asks, who shaves the barber? What is the assumption here? Yeah, that the barber has to be shaved, just by the way that we ask the questions. But perhaps a way to resolve this is that the barber does not need to be shaved. Why? Because they're not a man, right? So if the barber is a woman, they don't need to be shaved. But the way that the question is framed, including the way that we with the question suggests that this should be a man and it should be shaven, and then there's a confusion and a contradiction. So the answer is nobody shaves a man because the barber because it's a woman. So here we show a stereotype inconsistent. Okay? So the way that we ask the question is what's causing the conflict. So you can play with this in many different ways. You can play with the details in the vignette, or you can play in the way that you ask the question. So one thing that you can do is go and look up some famous riddle, and then not just change what is in the riddle in order to create an experiment, but also the way that you ask the question to suggest a certain direction. Okay? Another one, very similar to this. Now you should be very experienced at this. So an accountant says, that attorney is my brother. And that is true. They really do have the same parents. Yet that attorney denies having any brothers. And that is also true. How is that possible? So we already understand where this is going. So we talked about gender stereotypes, but perhaps now we can be a little bit more creative because you've shown me a lot of creativity. Perhaps there's another way to resolve this. So what is the obvious answer to this? Now that we talked about gender stereotypes, an accountant does not necessarily need to be a man. Immediately when we think of accountants, because traditionally it seems like accountants, there are more males than females, then we immediately think about a male, but not necessarily so, right? Is there another way to resolve this that shows a different bias? What other things can come out of this kind of riddle? The interesting thing about this is that if you go on Twitter and you see how people react to this, people come out with all sorts of very creative ways in order to resolve this. So one thing that you can code is how far-fetched an answer is to a question like that. Yeah. So you can code reaction times, you can code whether the answer is acceptable or not acceptable, and then just how far-fetched things are. But at least here, from the article that I showed you, the answer seems to be stereotype inconsistent. So we talked about mapping out stumpers. So in that table, we have stumper. This is the official name for this in social cognition. Then we have the dominant construal, that the accountant is a male. And we have an alternative construal, that the accountant is a female. And then we have the cause for all of that, which is stereotypes. So something is happening in the cognition, but because the way that society is construed, then society impacts cognition, therefore social cognition, under the umbrella of judgment decision making. Okay? How do we test these things in the lab? Actually, there's something called an IIT that tries to tap into some of these with reaction times. How many of you are familiar with IIT, have seen IIT? Some of you have seen? How many of you have never seen IIT in your lives? Some of you have not? Okay. So I can generally show you this, but it might require, so let's do, for example, the gender career kind of thing. So I'll just very, very quickly, I wish to proceed. Oh, sorry, go away. Need to install this IQ thing. I hope this will be quick. Yeah, so in Quizlet, the way that we do these things in our labs over here is that we get people to the lab, and in the lab we have a computer that has Quizlet on it. But nowadays Quizlet also has a web interface, so it allows you to load these things up. So I'll just open Quizlet for you. And IIT, the implicit association test, taps into our cognition in a very interesting way. So for example, here you see a category and you see an item. So for example, the category of male and female is just names of stereotypical names of males and females. So for males, Ben, John, Daniel, Paul, Jeffrey. Females is like Julia, Michelle, Anna, Emily, and so forth. But then we have two categories, and we want to see whether people have some kind of a stereotype regarding what matches those categories. Is it more males or is it more females? And here it looks at career. Sometimes we also do this with good, bad, and let's say race, Asian, white, or black and white, right? So here we have family. So names for the items for that category are home, parents, children, family, marriage, and so forth. And we have career, management, professional, corporation, salary, and so forth. And now we want to try and understand how people process these items. So typically what happens is that we take both of our fingers, and then it tells you to tap right or left based on whether it appears on the category on the right or on the left. So I'll show you what that looks like. But typically for the first task, we have males on the left and females on the right, and we randomize this. So sometimes it's the opposite direction. And then it tells you if you see a name that corresponds to male, then press the left. If you see something corresponds to female, press the right one. Okay? So it's just a categorization kind of thing. And then it records your reaction time, and then it records how many mistakes you've done. So here, for example, I'm not going to really do this for real, but you can see all these X's are when I'm actually making a mistake. So I'm just going through all this, and all these are trials where Jeffrey, for example, needs to go to the left, Paul needs to go to the left, but I'll do it on the right, and then it gives me an X. So I get scores based on whether I do this accurately or not. I'm just going to go through these trials. Now, the second trial is about categorizing words that have to do with family and career. So the way that I do this is that I proceed, salary, for example, is about career. If the office is supposed to be career, but I'm going to say family, and then it says a mistake. So this is a second category in order to make sure that people really understand where they need to categorize things. So I'm going to just rush through this. But where things become really interesting, is this third one. And now you can see family or male, career or female. So this is stereotype inconsistent, because females are not associated with career, they're more associated with family. So here we record the reaction times, and then we see that it's much harder for people to categorize this into the right category, compared to if this was stereotype consistent. Okay, so once again, I have the same thing, but now I need to both categorize salary and names. And then the reaction times and the number of misses and hits and the mistakes that I make are recorded, and then we make some kind of assessment. So you can go to Harvard Implicit. It's the biggest website. It's done hundreds of millions of these things. And then you can test whether your cognition has some bias towards gender being in a certain direction. Now, traditionally in the 1990s, it was argued that if you have an implicit bias, then likely that this is going to affect the way that you behave. But nowadays, this is very controversial, and we don't see it that way anymore. So there's a big difference between implicit bias and explicit bias and real bias. So we need to be very, very careful about this. But it's one way to tap into our cognition and to understand our cognition. And sometimes you can train people in order to do better in these kinds of things. Just need to be careful with the implications of this. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you don't do this fast enough or accurately enough, then that you're biased. It just means that your underlying cognition shows something about the stereotypes that we have in society. Another very famous couple. I love this couple because they tease each other a lot, but in a good way. They laugh a lot. So have a very contagious laugh. And this also comes from a very famous paper, now a little bit from 2018, from the journal Judgment and Decision Making. So this is just to show you the social cognition and riddles can get published in some of the great journals. And actually, Bar Hillel is of the group that started with Kahneman and Tversky at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. So it's very interesting to see how some of the TikTokers take this. So I'll play the beginning of the riddle for you, and then I'll ask you to solve this, and then I'll show you how they solve this, okay?
Okay, man rides into town.
Man.
A man.
Oh, I thought his name was Man.
No, a man. Can you just let
Such a
me...
horrible name for a guy. What's your son's name? Man.
A man rides into town on Wednesday.
Okay.
He leaves 3 days later on Wednesday. How does he do that?
What did he ride in on?
Okay, man.
Yeah, so we'll start here. So a man rides into town on Wednesday. 3 days later, he leaves on Wednesday. How is that possible? So that is the riddle. Yeah. So think about this for a second. There's a stumper here. Something doesn't make sense, right? So what doesn't make sense? Rides in on Wednesday. 3 days later, leaves on Wednesday, right? But, so what is our assumption? Sorry? Same man living. Yeah, in this case, it's a good assumption because this is the way the story goes. But good, I like the way you're trying to solve this. Yes, you were saying? Okay, I already like the way you're going with this. So there's something about this Wednesday thing that needs to be solved. So maybe Wednesday is not the Wednesday that we think it is. So maybe he doesn't understand Wednesday, or Wednesday stands for something else, right? Yeah, Wednesday could be the car or the vehicle, or it could be a horse, right? So on Wednesday doesn't necessarily say Wednesday the day. It could be Wednesday representing something else, right? So let's hear it from the TikTokers.
How does he do that?
What did he ride in on?
A horse.
You sound scratchy today. Why?
I'm hoarse. Are you telling me jokes while I'm in the middle of telling you a riddle? You're taking this too far.
Okay, Wednesday went into the bar. And then he said, the bartender said, hey. And Wednesday said,
yes.
Happily, you read my mind.
Did you just abandon ship on
Everybody knows the horse's name is Wednesday, man. I'm just giving you content to fill your 1 minute video. I don't know what to do with you. You said such obvious things. What can I do? So I had to think up 2 nice horse jokes to put in the middle of the Wednesday riddle. Okay, the horse's name was Thursday. Yeah, this couple is so adorable. I love watching their videos. Always makes my heart kind of like warm up a bit.
So they're hilarious. And they do a lot of these riddles. So she poses all kinds of challenges to him. And he's just, first of all, he's brilliant. Second of all, he's a really funny guy. So if you want to try some with me, here are some examples. So just to test your things, and I think you're getting better at this. So you came up with some interesting, first you were able to identify the problem, which was Wednesday, and then you're trying to understand and come up with some innovative ways to solve this. So here we have a big brown cow is lying down in the middle of a country road. The street lights are not on. The moon is not out, and the skies are heavily clouded. A truck is driving towards the cow at full speed, its headlights off, yet the driver sees the cow from afar easily and avoids hitting it without even having to brake hard. How is that possible? How many of you have a solution? Some of you? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, good. Some of you are catching on to this, right? So just the way that the question is framed is suggesting a certain assumption, right? What is the assumption that this is suggesting? What is the context and the background for this? Now, it's very easy for me to explain this to you now, but when I first tried to solve this, I failed. So there's something here that stumps people. So just from the first paragraph, it seems like the way that this is described assumes that it's nighttime, right? But there's nothing here that says anything about this being nighttime. So how is this possible? It's daytime, right? So that's one interesting example of assumptions that we make based on information that we are giving. Why would this information be given to us unless this was a nighttime? But sometimes it's just irrelevant information. So one of the things that you can do is look at different scenarios and then just add another context to them that directs people a certain way. But this is just a distraction. It takes them away from the real path of solving the situation. So how is it possible? Answer, it's daytime, okay? So now you're getting really good at this. I saw increasing numbers of people who are able to solve this and come up with a solution. This is a much more complicated one. If you can get this, then you really got the hang of it. So the context, individual bus rides cost $1 each. A card, a first-time passenger boards the bus. So a card is good for 5 rides, costs $5. First-time passenger boards the bus alone and hands the driver $5 without saying a word. Yet the driver immediately realizes for sure that the passenger wants the card rather than the single ride and change. How is that possible? Okay, how many of you have an answer? The beginning of an answer? 1, okay, less, this is 2, 3, yeah, perhaps. This is difficult. This is a bit more difficult because it requires a little bit of an outside of the box kind of thinking. So individual bus rides cost $1, and then a card good for 5 rides costs $5. But then without saying a word, he gives $5 and the driver immediately knows that the guy wants a card. So how would that be? So what differentiates between the one ride and the card? And then what would indicate to the driver that actually the person wants the card rather than the ride? Yeah. So of the people who were able to solve this, how, before telling what the answer is, how did you overcome the stumper? Yes, you had something to say? Yes, did? 5 coins, right. Yeah. So if it's 5 coins, then likely that it's not 1 coin in order to get 1 individual bus ride. Therefore, it's an indicative that you don't want the 1 ride, you want the 5, the card that indicates 5 rides. So very good. Were you at the beginning, was it difficult for you at the beginning when you saw this question to get the answer, or did you know immediately? Sorry? Yeah. So how usually to overcome these things? You really need to train yourself in order to think about things in a different way, to use all of the details in this. So this is a hard one. A lot of people don't get this right. So when we run experiments with this usually takes longer for people. But you can indicate what it is that you want by in 2 different directions. So people just assume $5 is like a single coin or a single note. But if you just give 5 coins of $1, then it clearly indicates to the driver what it is that you want. Okay, this is a difficult one. I agree. This might be a little bit easier. So in Bangladesh market, a small potato bag costs 5 taka, a medium potato bag costs 7 taka, a large potato bag costs 9 taka. Yet 1 single potato in that market costs 10 taka. How is that possible? So what is our assumption? What is the immediate assumption when we see a small potato bag or a medium potato bag or a large potato bag? We assume, yes? Sorry? Yeah, that it contains potatoes, right? But a potato bag does not necessarily have to be full of potatoes, yeah? So it could be just an empty potato bag. just calling a bag a potato bag kind of distracts people to get them to think about this. So this is a little bit frustrating, just like the coin. So sometimes one of the things that we measure, and I can already see this on your face, is impatience and frustration. So like, how frustrated are you after not solving one? How frustrated are you after not solving two? But if you measure a few of those, one after the other, and you keep giving people answers, you see that the level of frustration goes down and people solve these things quicker, right? So at the beginning, it's really frustrated. And then in the second one, it's frustrating, but then you kind of get the hang of it. But at the third one, when you first get this, then you feel like a lot of achievement and success in overcoming this frustration. So the answer is the prices are for empty bags rather than full bags. This is, I think, the easiest of those. So you can try and think about this. There's lots of creative ways in order to overcome this. Every morning, the farmer has eggs for breakfast. He owned no chickens and he never got eggs from anybody else's chicken. How did he get the eggs? So you already seem like an expert, right? What's your solution to this? So where is it from? Any birds? From a donkey? Yeah. Yeah, any birds possible. So give me an example for bird. What kind of other birds can it be? Goose, pigeons, yeah, lots of different birds lay eggs. That's terrific. So you were able to immediately see this? Yeah. How many were able to immediately see the solution to this? Yeah, not many. Okay. Some of you, maybe. Okay. Yeah. So by now, perhaps you're already experiencing a little bit of frustration. Here, for some reason, they came up with ducks. It could be all the things that you suggested. Right. Not many more of this, I promise, but it's just to give you a hang of things, in order to try and train you to think about this and how we do experiments with this. I'm going to show you the article on whether it did this. A final one, and I think this is perhaps the most frustrating to many people. It's like, while walking across a bridge, I saw a boat full of people, yet on the boat, there wasn't a single person. Why? So here you can be very innovative. What would explain that there's not a single person on the boat, yet it's a boat full of people? Seems like you wanted to say something, no?
People are inside the boat.
Okay, like a technical solution to this, whether you see all the people in the boat or you don't see the people on the boat, or whether they're on top of the boat or inside the boat. I like this. This is one way to approach this. Thank you. Seems like you have. All of them are married. Yeah. So there wasn't a single person on the boat. So no single people on the boat, but there's lots of married people on the boat. I know it's a little bit stupid, but sometimes we include these kinds of things. Thank you. How did you come up with this? The married versus single came to mind? So a single person can have multiple meanings, and it's a little bit of a kind of like a language twister. But yeah, so here we have Maya Bar Hillel, and this is a very famous one, learning psychology from Riddles, the case of stumpers. So for your third task, one of the things that you can go and do is to investigate this and see all the lists and how they've done this. And they also explain how they came up with this. So if you want the psychology of single questions, here you can see we talked about the accountant with the dominant control, the alternative control. It's the same thing here. So basically, the recipe for you to come up with your own riddles is to just have a dominant control, an alternative control, and then something that would show a certain stereotype. And it could be something that has to do with professions and genders. It could be about a cognitive economy. It could be about a kind of different priming. Something that has to do with the way that we perceive a certain object. Yeah, potato bags, for example. And then one of the things that you can do is that you can vary this in a between subject design, and then you can give this to different people and then see what it is that they've answered. So, for example, here, when we have counted the first version and the second version, we can see that how many people solved the puzzle really changes. How many people gave canonical solutions and how many people gave unacceptable responses. So it seems like when there are stumpers, people just come up with all sorts of things that are completely unacceptable. So we have a lot of ways in order to use these very silly and frustrating riddles in order to study something fundamental about judgment decision-making and social cognition. Okay, any questions before we conclude today's session? Okay, great. Then I'll see you next week. Thanks.